Hey everyone, it's Dr. Moses. Here it is, the beginning of week 3, and I want to walk through the syllabus where we are right now and provide some context for where we're going this week. If we look at the syllabus for the week, you know that on Wednesday we walked through several short assignments, and that was to prepare you for thinking about the scope of what project management is and how that scope now fits into the forward movement of the course. We're going to sort of take each dimension of project management and break it down into manageable steps. And as you know, we have our overarching project for the semester, including those 3 primary deliverables of the user manual, the promotional brochure, and the training presentation. And we're going to dig in now to those particular steps, to those, and how they fit together, and how you can document them using the IDPP, the Information Design Project Plan, that I handed out last week. So your job for today was to find a project management blog that interests you, and to to have found that, and to set up an RSS feed that would bring that content to you, instead of you having to go out and find it all the time. You can just have it come right to you. And then to review the site template and to propose improvements to that, or to think out loud, really, because it's so early in the semester, about what that template might look like. And we'll continue to talk about that, and I'll ask more pointed questions as we go. But it's always good for me to know what your initial responses are. For example, some people said, well, here it is, another calendar I have to maintain. I keep my own calendar. How am I going to make this work too? And so that perspective helps me understand that I have to think of ways to integrate that more essentially into the course in order for it to be useful to you and to me. So as you dig into the Information Development Project Plan, that takes us into this week. And so for Wednesday, what I'd like you to do is to, if you haven't already, is to review that plan in greater detail, so you have a sense of the scope of the semester-long project, and and develop your questions about how this thing is supposed to go. And then I've posted, several people asked for samples, which I had already posted to a different website. And now that we're using Moodle and the Google Sites, I transferred those pieces over. And now you can review the user manuals, brochures, training presentations, and some user scenarios that I think will be really useful in developing content for these projects. We start with users because everything has to be user-centered. If it's not user-centered, it's not going to work. We fight against that impulse to sort of dig in and start designing documents, start writing content before you even know what the actual needs are of your readers. And people make all kinds of assumptions that are wrong along those lines. So the whole idea of the user scenarios and profiles is to fight against those assumptions, and to really, base content on what you know, not on what you think you know. So how to proceed? Go ahead and look at those examples. These are from past students, and the user scenarios and profiles are a combination of materials from the HACOS book and from past students. And so after you look at those things, you'll get a sense for what a user scenario is supposed to accomplish. For example, when you go to the user profile page, the link, from the page we were just on to here, you'll see that your job is to develop 2 to 3 user profiles and scenarios. The models we use for the content are in Chapter 7 of HACOS, so there are plenty of examples, and you need to spend some time reviewing those examples and analyzing them for the kinds of content that you need for these, and then to draft them, and we'll discuss them. Look at these examples. This is from last year. This is a student example. Charles McNiff is a group publisher, and you'll get a sense here. The profile is about age and it's about philosophy or outlook or personality, those really very kind of personal attributes of someone who is likely to be interested in the documentation and deliverables, rather, that you'll be producing. Charles uses his iPhone as a link to all of the important information he needs to have at his fingertips. This is a profile for an app that the student was developing that helps people locate exercise spots, recreational places where someone could go to work out, for example. User profile 2, Chelsea Holters, 24-year-old student at St. Thomas. So here we have someone else, another user of the app, but a different demographic. So the other thing that you're thinking about in this process, as you think about finding users for your user manual, readers of your user manual, is to find, a cross section, someone who is maybe older or married versus single, or straight versus gay, or any number of needs, interests in a document or a service, right, or a product. So which elements, which demographic features finally become instrumental to you, on which you base decisions, will depend on your interviews. You can't go in with preconceived notions about whether or not to interview, or whether or not to write to women or men, or to young people or old people, or anything else, until you know what people's interests are and what you can accomplish in the time that you have, right? So as you think about the 2 to 3 people that you want to reach, figure out who's going to have time to talk with you, who will make time to talk with you, and who you can actually get in touch with in the time that you have. So the difference between a profile and a scenario: the profile is about the person, and the scenario is about the use of a particular of your deliverables, right? So here we have this Charles getting into his rental car, realizing that he has a few hours to relax. He'd be able to go to a facility that isn't the same one as the hotel he is staying at. So here's a very specific scenario saying the app is going to be used by people who are out of town and need to find a place to work out. That helps everyone involved in the project understand who the audience is. The usefulness of this is to humanize this whole process. We tend to abstract our thinking about who readers are and reduce them to mere demographics, which is the emphasis of the profile, right? Whereas the scenario is more contextual, it's more social. It places real human beings in situations that help us as writers, help your team, or in this case, you wearing several different hats, helps you understand who these people are as human beings, right? And not just types. Ultimately, we sort of have to reduce them to types, I guess. We have to abstract because we can't consider every human dimension of a reader. But these scenarios help us avoid stereotypes and assumptions that really do trivialize an audience. And what the problem is that people then will, if you do trivialize your audience, you oversimplify or you undersimplify your instructions or your promotional pitch. And that's why we're getting at the nuances, the detail of users. And then when you move from copywriting to visual design, and you've been working on this for months, and now you hand it over to a designer, or now you change hats and now you're the designer, you can go back to this scenario and remember and have that common basis for understanding the users without making all kinds of assumptions. And finally here, which is the last topic I'll discuss in this section, in this session, is developing user scenarios by looking at Chapter 7. If you haven't already read this chapter, please do so. You will find several bits of information that will help you be productive this week. A typical user scenario, it says here, may look like this, and the scenario provides us a context in which a user is going to use documentation for setting up a network. And there's a little bit about personality. John enjoys the troubleshooting challenge, and he's pleased when he solves a problem in record time, but he's not much of a reader. So here a little bit of the personality overlaps into this scenario. And so we don't have to be super rigid about the boundaries between a profile and a scenario. But I think we can, just generally just think of the differences between the two as one being focused on personality, or the person, the individual, and the scenario being focused on the context or the social interaction among people in which the document will be used. Best practices for developing user scenarios will walk you through lots of interesting, helpful information that will give you a sense of how to structure these things. You can survey your customers, you can interview them, you can do there are lots of different ways of finding information, and so reading this material will help you make lots of progress. Typical user scenario at Federal Express. Discussing people's responsibilities. This is helpful to think in terms of what people are responsible for, what their goals are. That's a key component of any scenario, would be goal, obstacles to that goal, and then how your document, your deliverable, helps people achieve their goals. That is central. So as you think about interviewing people, you might think of what people's goals are and what obstacles they encounter along the way. And there are several other examples here that you can use to inform your work. And that's it. I'm going to stop there, and then when we touch base on Wednesday, we can start talking about developing topics. But right now, I really want you to be focusing on these deliverables and the problems they're going to help people solve. You may not have decided yet what your user manual, what your promotional brochure or training presentation are going to be about. But I think as you look at these scenarios and profiles and can see the kinds of detail that will be helpful to you, perhaps that'll help you make some decisions about the direction that you'll go for your deliverables. Okay, I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Shoot me questions on the Google Plus community. If you share those out there, I can look at them out there and then post out there where everyone in the group can see the responses. Thanks.